Hello, fellow gamers. Today we are taking a little bit of a walk on the wild side as we look at one of the best games that the Nintendo Game Boy Color has to offer, Wario Land 3. At first, you may be wondering if Wario Land 3 is a game that is worthy of having a whole video dedicated to it, but we are here to tell you that this is one of the best 2D platformers of its generation, and up there as the best game to star our garlic-loving, treasure-hunting maniac that is Wario. The Wario Land series was a huge hit, and while the main focus of what we're talking about today will be 2000's Wario Land 3, we are also going to look at the other Wario Land titles that came before and after this wacky adventure, and even look at how this crazy guy came to be in the first place. We really want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video today, especially when you could be outside hunting for treasure to buy a castle that would make Wario green with envy. Be sure to check out our other videos that look at some truly epic video games, such as the original Super Mario Bros., Kirby, The Legend of Zelda, Metal Gear Solid, and many more. If you enjoy what you see here today, be sure to subscribe, as we have some huge videos in the pipeline featuring some of the most iconic video games of all time, as well as a few hidden gems and surprises along the way too. We also have a fun membership option you can subscribe to if you want to offer a little bit of help and support to the channel to help with future videos. Thanks again, and we hope you have fun with the video. It is pretty common knowledge that the first appearance of Wario was in the 1992 released Game Boy title Super Mario Land 2: 6 Golden Coins. The creator of Wario, Hiroki Kiyotake, had been working at Nintendo for a while and is the man credited with creating gaming icon Samus. He worked on many key titles for Nintendo over the years, such as Duck Hunt, Metroid, Kid Icarus, and Dr. Mario, to name a few, often working as a graphic and character designer for these games. The original Super Mario Land was a huge hit, but for Super Mario Land 2: 6 Golden Coins, Nintendo wanted something that was more in line with Super Mario Bros. 3 and the recently released Super Mario World for the Super Nintendo. This led to Super Mario Land 2 being a much bigger adventure, with more detailed levels and graphics, and feeling much more like a mainline Mario game than its predecessor. Hiroki Kiyotake came up with Wario and looked to the cartoon classic PyHi for inspiration, as Wario was to be the Bluto to Mario. His name is clearly a play on Mario's name, but his name is also a play on the Japanese word for bad, which is warui. There is also a story that claims that Hiroki Kiyotake and Takehiko Hosokawa were not exactly thrilled to be made to work on Super Mario Land 2, and thus they created a character all of their own to put their own stamp on it. Wario is not a straight-up villain like Bowser is. Wario was seen as a rival to Mario, and he was very jealous of him, leading to Wario getting his own castle by any means necessary. Getting a castle and a lot of treasure has been Wario's motivation pretty much since the beginning, and it is a character trait that Nintendo has really leaned into over the years. Wario, at his worst, is really just a jerk, or perhaps even a low-level bully, and at his best, he takes on a kind of anti-hero role. Sure, Wario may do the right thing in some games, but he is probably doing it because there is a ton of treasure there for him as a reward. Super Mario Land 2 was a massive hit, and the advertising that was on TV had Wario all over it. However, for some reason, Wario does not actually feature on the front of the box. He's mentioned on the back of the box, but it is very strange that this new rival to Mario is not featured right on the front of the box. Gamers loved Super Mario Land 2, and the leap from the first game is massive. People thought that Wario was a ton of fun, and there was more than a little buzz about Mario and Wario going head-to-head again in Super Mario Land 3, but that would not actually be the case. In 1994, the next title in the Super Mario Land series would be released, but Super Mario Land would be the subtitle, as the full name of the game was Wario Land: Super Mario Land 3. In many ways, it is a similar tactic to what Nintendo would do with Yoshi's Island on the Super Nintendo, calling it Super Mario World 2: Yoshi's Island. The first Wario Land game would set the tone for what the series would become. Hiroki Kiyotake and Takehiko Hosokawa were leading the charge, and they were very excited to get to create a game with their own character. This is not a typical Mario 2D platform game. Wario Land plays very differently. Wario is able to shoulder charge enemies and break down walls, and he can also jump on enemies. Wario is also able to pick up and throw stunned enemies. There are also a few different helmets that serve as power-ups. The core gameplay of what the series would become was right here from the very start, as was the story of Wario being desperate for treasure, with his main goal being to buy a castle as he was jealous of the one Mario had. If Nintendo were worried about Wario being able to star in his own game, and that was why it was made part of the Super Mario Land series, these worries would prove to be unfounded, as Wario Land Super Mario Land 3 was a huge success, selling over 5 million copies. Wario was now a star in his own right and could exist without being tied to Mario, and fans of Wario would not have to wait too long for his next adventure. Unfortunately, it is an adventure not too many people have had the pleasure of playing. In 1995, Virtual Boy Wario Land was released, and it is often regarded as one of, if not the very best game that Nintendo's ill-fated system had to offer. The library is very small, but many people will point to Wario Land as being an example of a great game on the system. It is a fully fledged Wario Land game, offering many of the same features and elements that the series is known for, but gamers would have to wait quite a while for a proper sequel to the first Wario Land. 1998 would see the release of Wario Land 2 for the Nintendo Game Boy, a very late release in the handheld's life, even more so when you consider that Nintendo would release the Game Boy Color in 1998. It is Wario Land 2 that really set the stage for what a Wario game would be. Wario would now lose treasure when hit instead of just losing a life. There was now more of an emphasis on level exploration, and there were several abilities that Wario could get known as reactions, which would help him progress through the levels and solve puzzles as well. A great comparison for the leap from Wario Land to Wario Land 2 is Kirby's Dream Land and Kirby's Dream Land 2. While it was on the original Game Boy, Wario Land 2 did offer a Super Game Boy colored version, and the game would also get a Game Boy Color version on a black cartridge that offered a colored version of the game. Wario Land 2 was very well received, and while shifting over 1 million copies is nothing to turn your nose up at, Wario Land 2 was not exactly released at the best time in the West. Pokémon would be released in October of 1998 in the USA, and while Wario Land 2 was released in Japan in 1998, it would not reach America until early 1999. By then, Pokémon had taken over the world, and if people were getting a new Game Boy game, chances are it was Pokémon. Also, it had been many years since Wario Land Super Mario Land 3 had been released, which could have also been a contributing factor to Wario Land 2 not selling as well. However, despite not selling as well as the previous game, Wario Land 2 was a big enough hit that Hiroki Kiyotake and Takehiko Hosokawa were allowed to make another game, and that game is the main subject of today's video, Wario Land 3. The year was 2000. The TV show Survivor became a huge hit, pretty much popularizing the reality TV that would flood stations all over the world for the next decade. Eminem was on top of the world with his Marshall Mathers album, and the first X-Men movie would set the tone for what would see superhero movies become the biggest thing cinema had ever seen. Nintendo was still going strong with its Nintendo Game Boy Color, and in this year, the Game Boy Color would get what is regarded as one of the best games the system has to offer, Wario Land 3. Hiroki Kiyotake, Takehiko Hosokawa, and the rest of the team had a fantastic foundation to build upon from Wario Land 2. They did not want to reinvent the wheel for this game. They knew that they had something special with Wario Land 2, they just wanted to make something bigger and better in every way, and it is more than fair to say that they achieved this. Granted, any list of the best video games is always going to be subjective, but it is more often than not that when someone does a list of the best Game Boy Color games, Wario Land 3 will feature on it, which is saying a lot when you consider just how stacked the Game Boy Color library is. Wario, as a character, was really well defined by the time we got to Wario Land 3, with him certainly being more of an anti-hero than a straight-up hero. After a plane crash, Wario finds himself lost in a cave where he comes across a strange music box. Wario ends up getting pulled into this music box, where he meets a strange character who tells him that he was once the ruler of this land, but he was tricked and sealed away by the evil inhabitants of this land. He needs his powers, which have been sealed away in 5 other musical boxes, in order to escape, and he asks Wario to help him. Now, this is Wario we are talking about here, So the way that he is persuaded is that he tells Wario that if he helps him, he will then help Wario get home, and most importantly of all, Wario can keep all of the treasure he finds along the way. Wario Land 3 actually has a fantastic twist to the story. It turns out that this person Wario was helping is actually Rudy the Clown, and Rudy the Clown is a villain, and he turned all the people of his land into monsters. They were not attacking Wario because they were bad, they were attacking him to try to stop him from releasing Rudy. Wario stands up to Rudy, defeating him, turning the people back into their former selves, and they help Wario get home. The story is honestly a great deal of fun, and it really did cement Wario as a character who may have a naughty side, and who is super greedy for treasure, but he is also not against doing the right thing when it is necessary. The story and presentation of Wario Land 3 were greatly expanded upon from Wario Land 2, and the same can be said for the gameplay. They took what worked in the previous game and made it even better here. The core gameplay is the same, with Wario having to not just platform and plow his way through enemies, either with his shoulder charge or jumping on their heads. Wario also has to explore, and there is even a bit of backtracking here as well. The core gameplay is a great deal of fun. Wario feels great to control, and of course, scoring as much treasure as he can is Wario's main motivation, and there are extra hidden items for you to find as well, which plays into the exploration aspect of the game, as well as a little bit of puzzle solving too, as you try to figure out what ability or reaction you need to use. Wario can make use of several abilities that he can utilize to take down enemies or get to new areas that were previously unavailable to him. For example, the lead overalls give Wario the ability to deliver a smash attack, which allows him to get rid of smaller enemies, stun larger ones, and even smash blocks. The swimming flippers give you the ability to swim, the head smash helmet lets Wario get rid of blocks that are in his way, and the grab glove is what makes it so that Wario can walk into small enemies and small objects, pick them up, and then throw them. These abilities can be expanded as you progress through the game, making Wario stronger and, once again, making it so that you can visit areas that were previously unavailable. Of course, there are tons of what the Wario Land series refers to as reactions that Wario can get. There are over 10 reactions, and there is a mixture of returning reactions from Wario Land 2 and some new ones as well. These are an absolute blast, and a huge part of the reason why the Wario Land series has the charm that it does. Hot Wario runs around while on fire, and he can plow through bonfire piles. There is a hilarious Vampire Wario reaction that sees him able to turn into a bat so that he can fly and easily defeat enemies. Snowman blocks can be broken by Snowman Wario, and Fat Wario can smash through blocks even without the smash attack ability, and small enemies that run into him will be defeated. This is just a small example of some of the fun reactions that Wario can have as you progress through the game, each one being brought to life with a hilarious sprite. The amount of personality that they were able to give to Wario thanks to these reactions is fantastic, and honestly something that Wario Land team does not get enough credit for. There are 4 different regions in the game, each one having its own set of levels. North gives you levels such as Out of the Woods and Peaceful Village. South will have you crossing the Big Bridge and dealing with the dangers of the Cave of Flames. To the east, you have the likes of the Frigid Sea and the Warped Void to deal with, and the west offers you the Desert Ruins and a town in chaos. Each of the stages has its own theme, and each of the different areas has bosses for you to fight. There are 4 different colored treasure chests that Wario needs to find in each of these areas. Wario needs to first find the key and also beat a boss to get the treasure. This is an example of where backtracking comes into play, as you may not have a certain ability to get a certain key or deal with a certain boss. Also, there is a day and night cycle in Wario Land 3, and this is something that was not all that common in games back then. When you beat a level, it will change what time of day it is set to. Certain treasures can only be obtained at a certain time. Stuff like this adds so much replay value to Wario Land 3, and in many ways it makes it so that it would not be all that unrealistic to classify Wario Land 3 as more of a Metroidvania style of game. In addition to this, there is a really fun golf minigame where Wario is tasked with knocking one of the enemies, Paragoom, into the hole in a certain number of shots. You can play this minigame in several of the levels in the game, and Wario will need to have a certain number of coins in order to do so. For what is a minigame, this is far more fun and engaging than it has any right to be, and each time you come across the ability to play this in the game, it is very exciting. While collecting the 100 pieces of treasure is a lot of fun, it is not necessary to collect all of the treasure in order to beat the game. However, this is something fun to give you more to do in the game and add a bit of extra excitement for those players who are completionists. Wario Land 3 was a huge success for Nintendo. It sold more copies than Wario Land 2 did. Wario Land 3 sold over 2.2 million copies and was a huge seller for the Game Boy Color. The game was also critically acclaimed, with many gaming publications and early video game websites loving just how long and deep of an adventure the game was. It really did make Wario seem like a big deal, perhaps not quite up at the same level as the likes of Mario and Link. However, it is not an exaggeration to put him with the likes of Kirby and Fox McCloud. The Wario Land series had become a real staple of the Game Boy, and even now, this is a very highly regarded game. As we said earlier, Wario Land 3 often features on many best Game Boy Color games lists. In terms of trying to add Wario Land 3 to your collection, this is not a game you are likely to find for $5. As of making this video, Price Charting has a loose copy of Wario Land 3 listed at $33. A complete in-box copy is right around $100, and if you want to add a brand new copy to your collection, that right now has an average of $317. While it is not exactly a cheap or budget game to add to your collection, it is a title that is worth the money, as it is not just a fun game to play, it has a ton of content that will keep you busy for quite a while. When it comes to re-releases, Nintendo has not made all that many official ways for gamers to play Wario Land 3. The Wii and Wii U Virtual Consoles did not offer the Game Boy or Game Boy Color games, meaning the first time since it was originally released in 2000 that Wario Land 3 was available to purchase was on the Nintendo 3DS Virtual Console, where it was released in 2012 in most regions of the world and then in 2013 in the USA. After this, Wario Land 3 would be released as part of the Nintendo Classics Collection for those who subscribe to the Nintendo Switch online service. While it is great that the Wario Land series can be played on the Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Switch 2 via the Classics Collection, it does also mean that the chances of Nintendo ever making a full Wario Land collection with all the games in the series on one Switch cart is very unlikely. Wario was now a mainstay of the Mario universe, and he would appear in the Mario Party and Mario Sports games. However, with Wario Land 3 being both a critical and financial success, a Wario Land 4 was never in doubt. Although this time the team would have some real horsepower to work with, as Wario Land 4 was going to be made for the Nintendo Game Boy Advance, and it would be released during its launch year of 2001. Wario Land 4 is a very different game from what we had with Wario Land 3. It is a much more linear, more platform-type experience, with the exploration and Metroidvania elements really scaled back. Now, that may sound like it was a disappointment, but that is not actually the case. In its own right, Wario Land 4 is a fantastic game, and the leap from the tech of the Game Boy to the Game Boy Advance is on display here, as Wario Land 4 is a truly gorgeous-looking game. The leap in visuals cannot be overstated here. Honestly, Wario Land 4 does not get the credit it deserves as far as its visuals go. Granted, it may not be quite as beefy an adventure as Wario Land 3 was, but the game is still great. The game sold very well, shifting over 2 million copies, and it was well received critically, but is not looked back at as fondly as Wario Land 3 is. You may think that with Wario Land 4 selling just as well as Wario Land 3, Nintendo would fast-track a fifth game in the series, but that was not the case. The next game would be for the GameCube, and that game was Wario World, which was released in 2003. Wario World was actually a pretty anticipated title, with many fans thinking that they were going to take what they loved about the Wario Land series and put it into 3D. While not a bad game, Wario World is a very basic game. It does bring Wario into a full 3D world, but this is a very linear and basic game that has more of a beat-em-up style to it, and it does not offer anything of any real depth. It is still a fun time, but those who were excited for a 3D version of Wario Land were left a little disappointed. Game Boy Advance owners were not left out in the cold. Also in 2003, the first title in the WarioWare series, WarioWare Inc. Mega Micro Games, was released, and it was a massive hit and would spawn many sequels. Even to this day, the WarioWare series is going strong on the Nintendo Switch. With the success of WarioWare, This meant that Wario Land and any other game featuring Wario had to take a back seat to WarioWare. However, in 2007, with the Nintendo DS, Nintendo would release a rather quirky Wario Master of Disguise, which used the touchscreen of the Nintendo DS in a rather unique way. While nowhere as good as the Wario Land games, Wario Master of Disguise was a fun distraction for a little while. But in 2008, 7 years after the last Wario Land game, Nintendo released Wario Land Shake It. This is a super fun 2D platformer that boasts awesome visuals and has that classic Wario charm and craziness that the Wario Land series was known for. Of course, with this being a relatively early game for the Nintendo Wii, it does force motion controls on you, as the shake it in the title is literal, as you have to shake the Wii remote quite often. But this is still a solid 2D Wario platformer. It may not reach the heights of Wario Land 3 or even Wario Land 4, but it was still a game that Wario fans could have a great time with. Unfortunately, Wario Land Shake It in 2007, as of making this video, is the last game in the Wario Land series. Not only that, outside of WarioWare and the Mario Party and sports titles, Nintendo has not given us a solo Wario adventure since then. So there you have it, the story of one of the more quirky and weird characters from the Super Mario universe, Wario. Wario Land 3 is a truly fantastic game, but the whole Wario Land series in general is great. There is honestly not a bad game in the bunch, and we highly recommend that you check them all out. As of making this video, Wario Land 3, Wario Land 4, and the game where he got his first break, Super Mario Land 2 6 Golden Coins, are all available via the Nintendo Classics Collection with the Nintendo Switch Online service. Hopefully the 2 other games will be added sooner rather than later. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today as we look back on one of the best games that the Nintendo Game Boy Color has to offer, Wario Land 3. We would love to hear your memories of this great game, the Wario series in general, and if you are feeling extra brave, let us know how you would rank the Wario series. Thanks again, and if you want to keep up to date on all the fun video game history videos we have planned, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Now, if you will please excuse us, all this talk of Wario Land has gotten us a little itchy to go on a treasure hunt of our own. We have other walks down memory lane looking at iconic games such as The Legend of Zelda, Metal Gear Solid, and many more, so be sure to check them out. We have more great video game history videos planned, so please subscribe so you do not miss out.